Shalom. I'm Eddie Chumney of Hebraic Heritage Ministries, and we welcome you to this week's Focus Israel Report. In this week's report, we're going to be sharing with you regarding the current status of the Israeli-Palestinian peace process, and it is as follows. Recently, the Arab League voted to support efforts by the Palestinians to have a draft resolution presented to the United Nations Security Council that would recognize a Palestinian state based upon 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. Being a current representative of the 15-member United Nations Security Council, Jordan has agreed to submit a draft resolution for the Palestinians. Palestinian Authority Chief Negotiator Saeb Erekat said, "The Palestinians want a UN Security Council resolution that will preserve the two-state solution. We want a specific time frame to end the occupation. We are hoping to achieve this resolution before Christmas." Jordan's UN ambassador, Dina Kawar, said that Jordan plans to submit the draft resolution by Christmas. If not, it will be in January. France, Britain, and Germany are in the process of drafting an alternative resolution outlining the principles of an Israeli-Palestinian final status deal and setting a 2-year timetable for completing negotiations on such an agreement. Other parameters for ending the Israeli-Palestinian conflict would also be set, European diplomats said. Senior Israeli diplomats said that the Europeans have also briefed the United States on their proposal. Israeli diplomats said that the European initiative was initially led by France. The European Union draft is meant to serve as a counterweight to an extreme one-sided resolution drafted by the Palestinians. The Palestinian draft calls for an Israeli withdrawal from the West Bank within 2 years and the immediate acceptance of Palestine as a full United Nations member. Also, it does not mention agreed land swaps between Israel and the Palestinians and does not mention anything regarding Israel's security. Some Western Council diplomats describe the Palestinian-Jordanian text as unbalanced. The French, British, and Germans want to present a more balanced resolution that could serve as a basis for renewed Israeli-Palestinian talks and win the support of the United States. While France still hasn't formally introduced its proposal, it is expected to call for the establishment of the 1967 borders as the basis for dividing the land of Israel, but it doesn't include the key Israeli and United States conditions such as Palestinian recognition of Israel as a Jewish state. French Foreign Minister Laurent Fabius said that U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry has been briefed on the European initiative, but that the United States aren't yet actively involved in the negotiations over its wording. A senior Western diplomat said that the Europeans were aiming for a consensus resolution devising a binding unspecified time frame and felt the United States were now open to that possibility. Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke with French President Francois Hollande asking him to stop the French initiative to support a Palestinian state at the United Nations Security Council. Netanyahu said, "I told Hollande that I think this move is a negative one and will backfire. Such a move is contrary to a peace agreement. It will thwart all future negotiations and bring about an escalation in the conflict," Netanyahu said. Hollande listened, and I don't want to say what he said, but I said things very clearly. Furthermore, Netanyahu accused European governments of siding with the Palestinians over their latest United Nations bid for statehood, saying that their demands would endanger Israel. "I say that the attempts of the Palestinians and of several European countries to force conditions on Israel will only lead to a deterioration in the regional situation and will endanger Israel," Netanyahu said. "Therefore, we will strongly oppose this." Israel diplomats said that the United States' position on the European proposal is unclear, and it seems that the United States hasn't yet made a decision on the matter. The United States wants to avoid casting a veto on any resolution relating to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict due to their efforts to forge a coalition of Arab states against the Islamic State. Israeli diplomats noted that the European resolution would be even harder for the Americans to veto than the Palestinian one. Thus, for instance, the European draft doesn't call for immediately recognizing Palestine as a full United Nations member. Moreover, it allots 2 years for final status negotiations and envisions an Israeli withdrawal beginning only after that. But Britain, France, and Germany still haven't agreed among themselves on all the issues. There's a consensus on calling for a Palestinian state based on the 1967 borders with land swaps, but there's an argument over whether the resolution should address the issue of Israel being the nation state of the Jewish people, which is a clause that Germany supports. As a result, there were discussions between Britain, France, and Germany regarding making a reference to Israel as a Jewish state. Palestinian recognition of Israel as the nation state of the Jewish people is a key demand of Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for any peace agreement with the Palestinians. The Palestinians are adamant in their refusal to recognize Israel as a Jewish state or as the nation state of the Jewish people. According to several European diplomats, Britain, France, Germany, and the United States are working on a European draft proposal that would include some kind of reference to Israel's Jewish character, but has not yet been decided on how exactly it will be worded. Some would like the resolution to state that Israel is the homeland of the Jewish people. Others prefer a reference to Israel as a Jewish and democratic state. A third version that has been discussed would not make explicit mention of Israel's Jewish character, but would refer to UN General Assembly Resolution 181 of 1947, the so-called partition plan, which mentioned the words Jewish state 30 times. No final text has yet been agreed upon, and it remains unclear how explicit the reference would be. But all states working on the draft resolution are in favor of mentioning, in some way or another, Israel's Jewish character. Some European officials believe that there is only a narrow window of opportunity to push a Palestinian resolution at the UN Security Council. Furthermore, there is a growing U.S. recognition, too, of European impatience with the current status quo, as several European parliaments in recent weeks have called on their governments to recognize a state of Palestine. For example, European parliaments in Britain, France, Spain, Ireland, and Portugal have already asked their governments to recognize Palestinian statehood, a move that would bypass negotiations altogether. Israeli diplomats said their impression is that the Palestinians want to advance their extreme draft in order to isolate the United States and force U.S. President Barack Obama to veto it. But senior Palestinian officials involved in the talks with the Europeans reject the claim that Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas opposes any European initiative or wants a confrontation with the United States. A Palestinian official said, "Our insistence stems from one simple reason, which is that in every conversation we've had with the United States and the Europeans so far, we haven't heard a proposal that could meet the Palestinians' minimum demands." U.S. officials said that the U.S. administration had not yet decided whether to back or veto either the Palestinian Jordanian or European UN resolution proposal. As a result, in an effort to bring together the various sides to form a consensus on the issue, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry had meetings with Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Rome and with European foreign ministers from Britain, France, and Germany in Paris, and with the Palestinians and Arab League officials in London. U.S. State Department spokeswoman Jen Psaki said that Kerry's meetings will include discussions on the various proposals at the United Nations to create a Palestinian state. There are a growing number of countries that are pushing for action on this issue at the United Nations, Psaki said. This warrants discussions with Israel, the Palestinians, and key members of the international community. As a result, Jordan's United Nations ambassador said that she was awaiting the outcome of meetings that U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry is having with Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and European governments in order to make a decision on how to proceed with the Palestinian-Jordanian UN Security Council proposal. The United States opposes supporting unilateral proposals to recognize a Palestinian state based upon 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital, by the Palestinians. The United States vetoed a Palestinian proposal to do so in 2011. However, U.S. officials said that they are drawing a distinction between unilateral steps taken by the Palestinians compared to a multilateral resolution at the UN Security Council, which would have the backing of many nations. It's important to understand that our overall U.S. goal in Kerry's meetings is to hear from and engage with other stakeholders, to hear their views, and to the best of our ability work toward a common path forward, a State Department official said. The original French draft by no means represents a consensus European position, the official said. Prior to meeting with Kerry, Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu rejected the consideration of Israel being forced to withdraw from Jerusalem and the West Bank within 2 years. Netanyahu said, "We stand against the possibility of a diplomatic assault that is an attempt to compel us by means of UN decisions to withdraw to the 1967 borders within 2 years," Netanyahu said. "We will not allow this. We will strongly and responsibly rebuff it. We will stand firm in the face of any dictates." In his meeting with Kerry, Netanyahu sought assurances from Kerry that the United States would block efforts by Palestinians and Europeans on Palestinian statehood. "Our expectation is that the United States will stand by its position for the past 47 years that a solution to the conflict would be achieved through negotiations, and I do not see a reason for this policy to change," Netanyahu said. Netanyahu declined to comment regarding whether he got those assurances from Kerry. Likud Knesset member Danny Danon warned that the Palestinian Authority is playing with fire by going to the UN Security Council to seek recognition of a Palestinian state based upon 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. Danon said, "Israel will respond to any unilateral moves by the Palestinian Authority. Any unilateral recognition of an imaginary country will lead to serious turbulence in the Middle East. Abbas and his friends in the Palestinian Authority must know that any unilateral move will be answered with a unilateral move by the State of Israel," he said. In meeting with key European foreign ministers in Paris, Kerry told the various European foreign ministers that the United States opposed the Palestinian-Jordanian draft resolution approved by the Arab League. At the conclusion of the meeting, U.S. officials said there was no consensus among the Europeans on the best way to move forward to support a Palestinian state at the UN Security Council. After Kerry's meetings with the Palestinians in London, Chief Palestinian negotiator Saeb Erekat described the meeting as difficult. During the meeting, Kerry asked the Palestinian delegation not to rush ahead with the 2-year timetable and, according to the source, refused to refrain from vetoing the Palestinian-Jordanian draft proposal at the UN Security Council. Erekat said that Kerry opposed the Palestinian-Jordanian draft proposal that was approved earlier this month by the Arab League. Fatah Central Committee member Mohammed Shataya said that the U.S. refusal to support the Palestinian-Jordanian draft was making it hard to get support from at least 9 United Nations Security Council members. This would place the United States in a dilemma whether or not to veto the Palestinian proposal. Well, that's going to conclude this week's report, where we shared with you the current situation with the Israeli-Palestinian peace process and the prospects for either the Palestinians or the Europeans' submission of a draft resolution to the United Nations Security Council, which would call for recognizing a Palestinian state based upon 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. Until we do it again, Shalom in Yeshua the Messiah. Amen.